I deal with people like you all day.
The eye roll was subtle, practiced, the kind that said, I deal with people like you all day without speaking a word. Sharon Mitchell, the front desk secretary at Riverside Charter Academy, didn't even try to hide it. She just looked at the black woman standing in front of her desk, sighed heavily, and rolled her eyes before returning to her computer screen. I already told you, Sharon said, her voice dripping with irritation. Principal Davidson doesn't take walk-in appointments. If you want to speak with him, you need to schedule through the online portal like everyone else. I understand that, the woman said calmly. She was in her late 30s, dressed professionally in a navy blazer and slacks, carrying a leather briefcase. Her natural hair was styled in neat locks, and she wore minimal jewelry. Everything about her said professional. But I've been trying to reach someone at this school for 3 weeks. My emails haven't been returned. My phone calls get transferred to voicemail. I'm here because I have no other option. That sounds like a personal problem. Sharon didn't even look up from her screen. We're very busy here. We can't drop everything just because you decided to show up unannounced. I'm not asking you to drop everything. I'm asking for 10 minutes of someone's time to discuss. Look. Sharon finally made eye contact, her expression one of pure condescension. I don't know what kind of school you're used to dealing with, but Riverside Charter Academy has standards. We have protocols. We don't just let random people wander in demanding to see the principal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. She turned back to her computer, dismissing the woman entirely. What Sharon Mitchell didn't know, what her arrogance and prejudice had blinded her to, was that the random person she'd just dismissed controlled every dollar of funding for the entire charter school network. And in exactly 18 minutes, Sharon Mitchell's world was going to implode. Let me back up 6 hours. To when Dr. Valerie Chen walked into her office at the State Education Department and made a decision that would change everything. Valerie was a director of charter school oversight for the entire state. She controlled the authorization, renewal, and funding for every charter school in the system. Her signature determined whether schools received millions in state funding or lost their charters entirely. She'd been in this position for 3 years. And for 3 years, she'd heard the same complaints about Riverside Charter Academy. Parent complaints about unresponsive administration. Teacher complaints about hostile work environment. Student complaints about favoritism and discrimination. Financial irregularities in their quarterly reports. Declining test scores despite increasing funding. The school had been on her watch list for 18 months. But this morning, she'd received a complaint that pushed her over the edge. An email from a parent, a black single mother whose daughter attended Riverside, detailing months of trying to address her child's bullying situation. Emails ignored, calls unreturned. In-person visits dismissed by office staff who told her the principal was too busy for people like her. The phrase people like her appeared in 3 separate complaints. Valerie had read enough. It was time for an unannounced site visit, the kind that charter schools dreaded, the kind where she showed up without warning, demanded access to records, interviewed staff and students, and assessed whether the school was meeting its obligations, the kind that could result in immediate funding suspension or charter revocation. She deliberately dressed down. No power suit, no identification badge visible, just professional casual wear that wouldn't immediately identify her as state authority. She wanted to see how the school treated ordinary people who walked through their doors. People who didn't look important. People who couldn't help or hurt them. People like the black mother whose complaint had triggered this visit. Now, standing at Sharon Mitchell's desk being dismissed like she was nothing, Valerie understood exactly what that mother had experienced. I'm not leaving until I speak with someone in administration, Valerie said, her voice still calm but firm. I've been more than patient. I've followed your protocols. I've tried to engage through proper channels. Those channels have failed. So now I'm here. Sharon's face flushed red. Are you threatening me? Because we have security here, and I will have you removed if you're going to cause a disturbance. I'm not causing a disturbance. I'm requesting a meeting. And I'm telling you N.O. Sharon stood up now, her voice rising. I don't know who you think you are, but you can't just walk in here acting entitled and demanding things. This is a place of education. We have rules. If you can't respect our rules, then you need to leave. A teacher passing by the front desk slowed down, watching the exchange with uncomfortable interest. A few students in the hallway turned to look. Sharon, what's going on? The teacher, a young white woman in her 20s, approached cautiously. Nothing I can't handle, Jessica. Just another parent who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Sharon said parent the way some people said pest. Apparently scheduling appointments online is too difficult, so she's decided to just show up and demand attention. I'm not a parent, Valerie said quietly. I've been trying to tell you that. Then you definitely don't belong here. Sharon's voice was sharp. This is a school. If you're not a parent or guardian, you have absolutely no business being on campus. Security. A security guard, an older black man named James, approached from down the hall. What's the problem, Ms. Mitchell? This woman refuses to leave. She's trespassing. Sharon crossed her arms triumphantly. Please escort her off campus. James looked at Valerie, then at Sharon, then back at Valerie. Something in his expression suggested he'd seen this movie before. Do you have business at this school? Yes, Valerie said calmly. I'm here for an official inspection. I've been trying to identify myself to Ms. Mitchell, but she keeps interrupting me. Official inspection. Sharon laughed. Right, and I'm the governor. James, remove her. Now. Ms. Mitchell, maybe we should let her explain. James started. I don't pay you to question my judgment, Sharon snapped. I pay you to do your job. Get her out of here before I report you for insubordination. James looked uncomfortable but moved toward Valerie. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Valerie reached into a briefcase and pulled out her official identification badge. Director of Charter School Oversight. State Education Department. Authorized to conduct unannounced inspections of any charter school receiving state funding. She held it up so both Sharon and James could see it clearly. The color drained from Sharon's face. My name is Dr. Valerie Chen, Valerie said, her voice still calm but now carrying unmistakable authority. I'm here to conduct an emergency inspection of Riverside Charter Academy. I've been trying to explain this to Ms. Mitchell for the past 10 minutes, but she's been too busy dismissing me, belittling me, and attempting to have me forcibly removed to actually listen. Sharon's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. James, I'll need you to notify Principal Davidson immediately that I'm here. Tell him he has 5 minutes to report to the front office or I'm beginning this inspection without him. Valerie turned to Sharon. And Ms. Mitchell, I'll need to see your personnel file, your training certifications, and documentation of every parent complaint filed in the past year. Now. I didn't know. Sharon's voice was barely a whisper. You didn't know because you didn't listen. Valerie's voice was steel. You made assumptions based on my appearance and decided I wasn't worth your time or respect. That tells me everything I need to know about how this school treats parents who don't fit your expectations. Jessica, the teacher who'd been watching, spoke up hesitantly. Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry. If I'd known. Don't apologize for her. Valerie gestured at Sharon. She's perfectly capable of apologizing for herself, if she chooses to. Sharon just stood there, frozen. James, Valerie prompted. Yes, I'll get Principal Davidson right away. James almost ran down the hallway. Principal Robert Davidson arrived 90 seconds later, practically sprinting. He was a white man in his 50s, balding, wearing an expensive suit that didn't quite fit right. His face was flushed from running, and from panic. Dr. Chen. His voice was too loud, too jovial, desperately trying to recover the situation. What a wonderful surprise. If I'd known you were coming, I would have prepared a proper welcome. Sharon, why didn't you notify me immediately that Dr. Chen was here? Sharon looked like she might faint. Ms. Mitchell didn't notify you because she was too busy trying to have me removed from campus, Valerie said flatly. She refused to let me identify myself. Dismissed me as another entitled parent. Attempted to have security escort me out. And when I persisted in trying to explain why I was here, she accused me of trespassing and causing a disturbance. Davidson's jovial expression crumbled. I'm certain there's been a misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding. Your front desk secretary treated me with contempt, made assumptions based on my appearance, and refused to show basic professional courtesy. Valerie pulled out her tablet, which is consistent with the 17 parent complaints I received about this school's administrative staff over the past 18 months. Complaints about being dismissed, ignored, and disrespected, particularly complaints from parents of color. She looked at Sharon directly. This is exactly the behavior those parents described, and I just experienced it firsthand. Davidson turned to Sharon, his face now red with anger instead of embarrassment. Sharon, is this true? I didn't know who she was. Sharon's voice broke. She just walked in without identification, without an appointment, and started making demands. I introduced myself. Valerie interrupted. Multiple times. You didn't listen. You were too busy judging me. Principal Davidson, I swear I would never have... Sharon started. Never have what? Treated me with respect if you'd known I had power. Valerie's voice was sharp. That's exactly the problem, Ms. Mitchell. You only show respect to people you think can affect you. Everyone else is beneath your courtesy. She turned to Davidson. I'm conducting a full inspection. Effective immediately. I'll need access to all financial records, personnel files, parent complaint logs, and disciplinary records. I'll be interviewing staff, students, and parents, and I'll be reviewing your charter compliance in detail. Of course, absolutely, whatever you need. Davidson was sweating now. Can we discuss this in my office? Perhaps over coffee? I'd love to address any concerns you have, and... This isn't a negotiation, Principal Davidson. This is an emergency inspection triggered by persistent complaints about your school's administration and treatment of families. Valerie's voice carried through the front office. Several staff members had gathered in doorways, watching. Your charter is up for renewal in 6 months. This inspection will determine whether I recommend renewal, probationary renewal, or revocation. The gathered staff members gasped. Now, I'd like to start by speaking with parents and students. I'll need a private room set up where I can conduct confidential interviews. I'll also need your full cooperation in providing any documents I request. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Davidson said, his voice hollow. Valerie looked at Sharon one more time. Ms. Mitchell, you're suspended from your position effective immediately pending the outcome of this inspection. Please gather your personal belongings and leave campus. You can't fire me. Sharon's voice rose to near hysteria. I've been here for 8 years. I have rights. I'm not firing you. Principal Davidson will make that decision. But I can and am removing you from your position during an active investigation. You will be paid during the suspension, but you will not be representing this school while I'm investigating complaints about administrative hostility. Sharon looked at Davidson, pleading, Robert, tell her she can't do this. Davidson wouldn't meet her eyes. Sharon, just go home. We'll sort this out later. The humiliation on Sharon's face was profound. She grabbed her purse with shaking hands and walked out of the front office, tears streaming down her face. The small crowd that had gathered stood in shocked silence. Valerie addressed them directly. For anyone who's been witnessing this, I'm Dr. Valerie Chen, Director of Charter School Oversight for the State Education Department. I'm here because this school has received persistent complaints about administrative bias, unresponsiveness, and hostile treatment of families. What just happened at this front desk is exactly what those complaints described. She paused, letting that sink in. If any staff member, student, or parent has experienced or witnessed similar behavior, I'll be conducting confidential interviews throughout the day. Your honest feedback will help determine the school's future. The inspection lasted 8 hours. Valerie interviewed 32 people, parents who'd been ignored, teachers who complained about administrative retaliation, students who'd witnessed favoritism and bias, support staff who'd been treated as invisible. The pattern was overwhelming and consistent. Riverside Charter Academy had created a culture where certain families, primarily wealthy, white families who donated money, received immediate attention and accommodation. Everyone else was dismissed, delayed, or disrespected. Sharon Mitchell wasn't an aberration. She was the face of the school's actual values. By 6 p.m., Valerie had more than enough documentation to make her recommendation. She sat across from Principal Davidson in his office. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in one day. "Principal Davidson, I'm going to be direct with you. Your school is failing its mission. Not academically, your test scores are decent. But fundamentally, you created an environment where families are valued based on their ability to donate, their connections, their appearance. Dr. Chen, I had no idea Sharon was treating parents that way." "Stop." Valerie held up her hand. "I've interviewed your staff. This isn't about Sharon. She's a symptom of a culture you created and tolerated. 7 staff members independently described an environment where difficult parents, code for Black and Hispanic families, working-class families, anyone who questioned school decisions, were deliberately stonewalled." She pulled out her notes. 3 teachers told me they were reprimanded for being too accommodating to parents you deemed problematic. Your vice principal admitted that Sharon was following unofficial guidelines about which parents got immediate access to administration. Your development director described a formal system of prioritizing donors over non-donors. Davidson put his head in his hands. "You built this system," Valerie continued. "Sharon just enforced it. And today, she enforced it on the wrong person. But the fact that she enforced it at all tells me everything I need to know about Riverside Charter Academy. What happens now?" Davidson's voice was barely audible. Valerie opened her tablet. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm recommending probationary charter renewal. You have 12 months to demonstrate systemic change or your charter is revoked." 12 months. Davidson looked up, panicked. "That's not enough time to." "It's more than generous given what I found today. Here are your conditions." She read from her screen. 1. Complete administrative staff overhaul. Sharon Mitchell will not be returning. You will implement bias training for all staff. You will create transparent parent communication protocols that apply equally to all families regardless of income or background. Davidson nodded numbly. 2. You will establish an independent parent advisory board with 50% representation from families of color and low-income families. This board will have direct input on school policies and the authority to file complaints directly with my office. 3. You will hire a diversity and inclusion coordinator with real authority to investigate bias complaints and recommend disciplinary action. 4. You will publish quarterly reports on your progress with these measures. I will conduct unannounced follow-up inspections. One more complaint that matches today's pattern, and your charter is done. No warnings. No second chances. She closed the tablet and looked at him directly. "You have a choice, Principal Davidson. You can treat this as a burden, as unfair oversight that's making your job harder. Or you can treat it as an opportunity to actually serve all the families in your community instead of just the ones who look like you and can write big checks." "I want to do better," Davidson said quietly. "I really do. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten." "That's a problem with privilege," Valerie said. "When you're not the one being dismissed, ignored, or disrespected, it's easy to miss. But those families, they felt every single slight, every unreturned call, every eye roll, every time they were made to feel less than." She stood up. "You have 12 months. Use them wisely." Outside the school, Valerie sat in her car and exhaled deeply. Her phone buzzed. A text from her partner. "How did it go?" "Exactly as expected. And worse than I hoped. Coming home? Soon. Just need a minute." Valerie looked back at the school building. Thought about Sharon Mitchell and her casual contempt. Thought about all the parents who'd experienced that same dismissiveness and had no recourse. No power. No ability to demand change. She thought about the Black single mother whose complaint had triggered today's inspection, who'd been trying for months to get help for her bullied daughter, who'd been ignored and dismissed at every turn. Valerie picked up a phone and called her. "Ms. Johnson, this is Dr. Valerie Chen from the State Education Department. I wanted to let you know that I conducted an inspection at Riverside Charter today based on your complaint." "Yes, today. Unannounced. I experienced exactly what you described. The front desk secretary actually tried to have me removed from campus." She listened to Ms. Johnson's shocked response. "I want you to know that changes are coming. Mandatory changes. And I want to personally apologize that it took this long. You shouldn't have had to fight this hard to be heard. Of course. My office number is on the email I'll send you. If you experience any retaliation or continued problems, you contact me directly. You're welcome. And Ms. Johnson, your daughter is lucky to have a mother who fights for her. After hanging up, Valerie allowed herself a small smile. Sharon Mitchell had rolled her eyes at the wrong woman. But more importantly, she'd rolled her eyes one time too many. At one too many parents who deserved better. And this time, there had been consequences. 3 months later, Riverside Charter Academy looked different. A new front desk administrator, a Latina woman named Maria Rodriguez, who'd previously been dismissed from another school for being too friendly with parents, greeted every visitor with genuine warmth. Parent response times had dropped from weeks to 24 hours. Complaint rates had dropped by 70%. Principal Davidson was still there, but humbled, learning, slowly understanding that excellence meant serving everyone, not just the families who could donate to the annual fund. Sharon Mitchell never returned to education. She'd tried to find another administrative position, but the professional network was small. Word spread. Schools knew what she'd done. No one was interested in hiring someone who'd literally tried to kick out the director of charter school oversight. She worked retail now, behind a checkout counter, serving customers regardless of their appearance or attitude, experiencing what it felt like to be dismissed and undervalued. Some people learn from their mistakes. Sharon Mitchell just resented hers. But at Riverside Charter Academy, change was taking root. During a parent-teacher conference, Ms. Johnson, the mother whose complaint had started everything, approached Maria at the front desk. I just wanted to say thank you for the way you welcomed my daughter and me today, for treating us like we matter. Maria smiled warmly. You do matter. Every family here matters. That's not negotiable anymore. It's different now. The whole school feels different. That's because leadership finally understands what they should have known from the beginning. A school that doesn't respect all its families doesn't deserve to exist. 6 months later, Valerie conducted her follow-up inspection. This time, she announced it in advance. Arrived in her full professional attire with her identification visible. Was greeted warmly by Maria, efficiently directed to Principal Davidson, and given immediate access to all requested documentation. The change was remarkable, measurable, real. Parent satisfaction scores had improved by 40%. Staff turnover had decreased. Student outcomes were stable. Most importantly, complaints about administrative bias had dropped to near zero. At the end of the day, Valerie sat across from Davidson one more time. You did it, she said simply. You actually made the changes. I'm recommending full charter renewal. Davidson looked relieved but not triumphant. I owe you an apology, Dr. Chen, for what Sharon did, for what I allowed to happen here. You don't owe me an apology. You owe it to every family that was treated poorly before I showed up. Valerie closed her laptop. But you're making amends. That's what matters. I learned something these past 6 months, Davidson said. Running a good school isn't about test scores or fundraising. It's about treating every child and every family like they matter. Seems obvious now, but I missed it for years. A lot of people miss it, Valerie said. Power makes you blind to how you treat people who can't affect your success. Sharon Mitchell learned that the hard way. Do you think she regrets it? Valerie considered. I think she regrets getting caught. That's different from understanding why it was wrong. She stood up. But you understand now, and that's why your school gets to keep serving families. Use that understanding wisely. The moral lesson. Treat everyone with respect, not because of what they might be able to do for you, but because respect is what every human being deserves. The person you dismiss today might control your future tomorrow. But even if they don't, even if they have no power over you at all, they still deserve dignity. Organizations that allow some people to be valued while others are dismissed create cultures of contempt that eventually rot from the inside. And when authority finally shows up to inspect those rotten cultures, the contempt is on full display. Because people like Sharon Mitchell have spent so long dismissing the unimportant that they've forgotten how to recognize when someone important is standing right in front of them. Power doesn't excuse disrespect. Position doesn't justify condescension. And the moment you stop measuring human worth by appearance or status is a moment you've lost sight of what really matters, treating people with the dignity they deserve simply because they're human.